Thank you for joining us. We'll be starting shortly.
Good morning to all our valued Candy users and a very warm welcome to day 2 of the 2021 Candy Visual User Seminar. Over the course of the seminar, we will be helping you to get the most out of your Candy solution with the specific focus on estimating, which was covered in our presentation yesterday, planning today, and post-tender best practices tomorrow. Today, Mrs. Marjorie Subramani will show you the power of Candy planning. Marjorie, take it away.
Hello everyone, and welcome to our second session of the day, where we will cover the best practices for planning. Like Abelo mentioned, my name is Marjorie Subramani, and I am truly delighted to continue with today's theme of best practices for estimation, planning, and project control. So today we will be looking at how certain functions are performed within Candy, but most importantly, why these functions are necessary. So let's have a look at our agenda today. So we will start off with the .xml program import. So this is where we conduct an import from an external source. After the import, we will run a few analyses. Then we're going to look at planning resources, how to define resources, allocated, draw up histograms, and run a few resourcing reports. Then we have activity coding. So these are secondary codes in Candy, which allows you to just better manage specific parts of a program. We also have on the agenda the information schedule and the long lead schedule, and this will then allow you to manage activities or operations that happen off-site, but does have a direct impact on-site. And then lastly, we will touch on the link and forecast overview and just look at one or two reports. All right, so let's get started. First on the agenda, we have the importing of an existing program. I'm just going to switch over to Candy. And you'll see that I have selected the Digital Twin Office Park. This job was fully priced by Brinley Webster. And on my program manager, you will see that I have 2 existing programs. One is my digital to an office park. It's been fully linked, as well as linked to the estimate. And then I have my XML import, which is a fully linked construction program. Right, so for the import, what we need to do is you just need to click on Tools, go to Import, and then these are your options. You can import the bill of quantities, import from another program, and then we have the general importer. So this means that I can import an XML file, an MPX file, CSV, XLS, or you can see the last one, which is Excel files. Right, what's nice about this is that by clicking on this little question mark, the blue question mark is our little help file, and it will just tell you more information pertaining to the type of files you can import. But what's very nice about these help files is if you go right to the bottom of the screen, you'll see it says see also. And if you click on import a project XML file, because that's what we will be doing, we'll be importing a Microsoft project XML file. And if I click on that little topic, it will give me more information pertaining to the import of a project XML file, right? So it will tell you what columns are not imported. And then very important, you'll see the recommended checks. So what are the recommended checks we suggest you do? You can have a look at it on screen. And then we also have a disclaimer saying that due to the differences in the calculation and the activity types between the products, the responsibility lies with the person who does the export or who provides the export and the person who does the import of this external document. Right, so without any further ado, let's get started on it. So I will just go to my import, general importer, and then I will scroll to where I have my files. You'll see I have a lot of MSP files, so I'm looking for the MSP import construction program, and I know it's the correct file because under my type, it is a XML document. Right, I will just click on open, and it will take a while to just read all the data. And then the next screen we will see is my matching text field screen. So if you have some text to match, you can then do your matching on this specific screen. I don't have any right now, so I will simply click on OK. Then on our analysis display, we have the start of the program, which is the 1st of June, with the end date. What are my week start days? And I mean, you can see the analysis based on the import we've just done. So I will close this, go back to my program manager. There's my MSP import. I will simply drop it to under the heading that I need it to be, and there it is right there. Right, so I will select this program, and very important, or just something to keep in mind is, yes, I have selected the program, but then I need a document to view my program. So I've selected document 1.1, which is my standard bar chart. You'll notice that when we do the import, all the activities are currently purple, and it's all towards the left-hand side of my bar chart. So all I need to do is click on the calculate button for each and every bar to move into place. All right. Okay, so we need to just have a look at what gets imported when you do a import from your Microsoft project program. So let's have a look here. So the stuff that does get imported are your start date, multiple calendars with your holidays and workdays exceptions. One thing to just note here, if you have defined only one calendar on your Microsoft projects or your Primavera program, only that one calendar will get imported. Then we have the summary headers. For my activities, the activity ID, the descriptions, as well as the durations gets imported, as well as the precedence logic. So this is the relationship between the various activities. Furthermore, you have your special types that gets imported. So these in Candy, it's known as your contract start date, your contract end date, or your target start date and your target end date. And these are activities that must start on a specific day or finish no later than a specific date. or it starts no earlier than a specific date and finishes no later than a specific date. So these are the things that does get imported, right? So let's have a look at what does not get imported. So if you have a base program and snapshots, any other special task types, apart from what we just looked at earlier, will not get imported. No milestone marks and no user-defined columns. For your resources, no resources are imported and no resource calendars are imported. So that means when you do import your program and you want to have resources allocated to it, you'll have to define it within Candy. Okay, so we're going to follow that checklist, but also if you can do yourself a favor and go through the 201 or 202 manual, we have a very detailed checklist that we cover in the 202 course, C202 training course. And whether you are creating your program from scratch, whether you are recovering a program, which is an existing Candy program, or whether you're importing a program, it's always best practice to just run through these recommended checks. Okay, so we have noticed that the start date is the 1st of June 2020, and we can confirm that yes, indeed, that is the case. The logic links have been imported, as you can see here. And then if I go all the way down to my last activity, clean down and hand over, you'll see that I have a B type listed alongside my activity. That means that no special type was allocated to this activity, which means no start date, no end date, and or no target end date will have been allocated to this activity, which is why it's got a B type. Right, so let's just take a moment to look at my various types that are available in Candy. So a B type means that it is an activity that has been incompletely linked. So this means that my activity either does not have a predecessor or a successor, or in some instances does not have both of it. If you look at the first one over here, it's a blank type. And this means that these activities are fully linked, meaning that it does have a predecessor and it does have a successor. When we look at our start and end types, we have a contractual start and a target start, and we have a target end and a contractual end. So the only difference between the two is that the contractual start and end dates are fixed dates. So if I have an end date of in this case, we have an end date of mid-May 2022. That means that I can finish earlier than that, but not later than my mid-May 2022 end date. With my target end, this is what we call a floating end, and it will use up all your float. So even if you finish earlier than your suggested end date, your activities will still show as critical because it uses up all your float. So if you finish in April, instead of now showing that 10 or 30-day float that you might have, it will just force the activity as critical, showing no float at all. Okay, so the same applies for your target start and your contractual start. Then we have the F type. So this activity uses all its free float. The V type, similar to the F type. Then we have the H type. So these are activities that work through non-working days. So you will allocate an H type to an activity that works Monday to Monday. So if we look at a typical curing activity, it does not go on weekend or finish work 5 o'clock on Friday and then continue again on Monday at 8. All right, so then you will allocate an H type activity to it. Then we have a tied activity, also known as a hammock. And this is just to calculate, so you will allocate it to the start of your activity and the end of your last activity so that it spans over a certain duration or over certain activities. And then you'll see we have the key and marked activities. All right. So before we can do anything, what's important here is that you need to make sure that your program is fully linked. Okay, so that means you need to take care of all your B-typed activities. And if we just look at this example, install elevator equipment. So remember, I said that it doesn't have a successor or predecessor, and you can clearly see that this one is open-ended. It does not have a successor activity. All right, another thing I would like to bring your attention to are activities with open starts and open ends. All right, so you'll see that on the left-hand side under my T column, it's a blank type. So that means it's fully linked because it does have a predecessor and it does have a successor. However, it is an open-ended activity. So this is something to just note, because when you work in projects or Primavera, you need to take into account, the way of links in that specific program. In Candy, we make use of the double links, meaning it's a start-to-start relationship with an end-to-end relationship. In this case, yes, we have introduced a start-to-start relationship, but because it is open-ended, it means that if there is a delay on this specific activity, it has absolutely no effect on the succeeding activities. So I've just increased this duration, and once I hit calculate, you'll see that none of the succeeding activities are affected by it. Okay, so that is why it is important to make sure that you have a program that has been fully linked. Let me just quickly go back to the PowerPoint slide and run through some of the recommended checks. So we have the calendar, which we will look at in a moment. The start date, we already confirmed that the start date on the program is as per what was important, which is the 1st of June. We had a look at the B-typed activities. That means that it doesn't have a predecessor or a successor. Open starts or ends, that was the example we just looked at. Contract starts and ends. So this you will usually introduce once you have ensured that your program has been fully linked. And then lastly, just the overall logic. Okay, so now I'm going to switch back to Candy. I will hit calculate. You guys will also see that whenever you make a change on the program, right, whether I increase or decrease my duration, the calculate button will turn pink, meaning that you've made a change and now the system requires you to hit the calculate button to enforce that change. You'll also see that the bar changes its color. So we have the red, which indicates that it is critical activities. We have the green, indicating that it's an activity with float. And then we have a purple color. And this simply means that this activity is overrunning its end date. All right, but the minute you hit calculate, it will change back to red until you fully link this activity. So I'm just going to reduce this again to 15 days. Okay, so on the checklist also, we have the calendar. So you can click on the calendar setup icon, and here you'll see that we only have one calendar defined. On the analysis display chart that we looked at earlier, after we did the import, we noticed that only one calendar was imported. So that means my MSP program only had one calendar defined. If, however, you would like to have more than one calendars, you're more than welcome to do that. So you simply go to Tools, add a new calendar. You can give it a unique code. How many days per week will you be working? And then give it a calendar name. So once you have created this new calendar, you will have to allocate it to specific activities, because how Candy works is if you have more than one calendar, all your activities default or uses the default calendar, which is your PC calendar or your project calendar. Okay. So I will close my calendar and then let's continue with our logic links. Right, so what I said just now was the whole point about having open-ended links. And because it is difficult to identify, I mean, there's no indication under my T column that these are open-ended activities, but that is why you can make use of our filtering functions. Okay, so for that, you simply go to Tools, to View, Filter, and these are all your filters that you have available. So you have your progress filters. This obviously comes after you have started recording your progress. You have your program debug filters, which we will come back to now because this helps you identify your open ends and starts. Then you have your logic filters, and this is more for your critical activities, date ranges, as well as your activity filters. Okay, so for this exercise, we will go to the program debug filter, and you can either choose the activities that have open starts and ends, so that looks for both of the filters, but I prefer doing it one at a time. So I'll start off with my open starts, and then I'll continue to my open ends. Then you can also run a filter for activities that have unlinked ends, as well as activities that are in a loop. But we have to also just bear in mind that when it comes to Candy, yes, we have a filter to look for activities that are in a loop. However, if you do have an activity that's in a loop, it will not allow you to even calculate, because it will force you to first fix that loop before you can continue on to your next activities. All right. So before we start off with our open starts and ends, I would like us to just filter for activities that have unlinked ends, and you'll see that it has found a total of 36. So if I hide my rejects, you see this specific filter picks up all my B-type activities, as well as my open start or open-ended activities. So these are all your Bs, and it found a total of 36. So I will abandon that. And the next filter I would like to run is to have a look for activities that have open starts, and you'll see that no items were found to match this filter, so I'm happy with that. That means I can now continue to look for activities with open ends. Okay, so it has found a total of 36 activities, and all this requires you to do is just close those open-ended activities. All right, if you have a B-typed activity, and if there's no succeeding activity that's going to happen after it, you can introduce things such as snagging or handover or whatever the case is, and then just link it to that last final check that you would like to do before the actual contractual handover date. So that is for your B-type activities. For your open-ended ones, all you need to do is, depending on the relationship between the activities, you simply close that off by drawing your link close. And what this does is then it now forces the system to say that, hey, if there's a delay on my activity 0028, I cannot continue or finish activity 0029 until I fix whatever delay is there. I fix whatever delay is happening on 0028. So, and as an example, you'll see that now, if I increase my duration, the minute I hit the calculate button, it will affect the succeeding activities. And that is what we want at the end of the day, because this comes especially in handy when you start recording your progress, because delays does happen. All right, so that's why it's important. You just need to make sure that all your activities are fully linked. Okay, so I won't be linking this entire program, which is why I had I've already created the existing program you saw on my screen earlier, which is this XML one, fully linked construction program. So it's this very same one that we have imported. It's just that now I made sure that I fix all the links. So if I just scroll through it quickly, you'll see that there are no B-typed activities alongside my activities, and if I go all the way down, you'll also note that I have introduced an E-type activity, meaning that this is my contractual end. And if I go all the way to the left on my bar chart, let me just scroll down a bit. So there's my timeline, which I've introduced. And now if there's a delay in any of these activities, so let's say my snagging takes longer than anticipated because of some delays that happen above, when I hit calculate, you'll see that it affects my end date. And my activities are now purple, meaning that it indicates I am overrunning my end date. Okay, so that is why you would need to make sure you have introduced these special types like it's known. Okay, so just to make double sure that I fully link this program, I can just run a filter. So it's the same process. You go to view, you go to filter, and now in this case, I know there's no open starts. So I'll just select the third option, which is check for open starts and ends. And I'm happy to see that no items were found to match this filter. If we do one for open links or unlinked ends, which is the fourth one from the top, it found one, and the one it found is my last activity clean down and handover. And it makes sense that it's an open end or unlinked end because this is the last activity on my project. Okay. So I will abandon this toolbar. And now another filter I can run is just to have a look at my critical activities. So to isolate your critical activities, you simply go to view, filter again, logic filters this time and not the program debug, and you select the option critical activities. And these are activities with no float, meaning a delay in any one of them will affect the end date. Right, and there is my critical activities. And if you look on my filter toolbar, we have found a total of 49 critical activities. If I want to look at my activities with float, I simply click on the invert button, and this will just give me the inverse of what I was searching for. And you'll see that we have a total of 287 non-critical activities. All right. Also, what I would just like to mention is that you can customize this document. So yes, this is my document 1.1 standard bar chart. I have my type, activity number, activity description, and duration. If you want your total float columns in here, you can obviously add it in. Alternatively, before you start customizing these documents, you can also go to the document manager. You'll see that if you just hover your mouse over these icons, it will tell you what is what. So if you go to the document manager, there's a list of standard documents available. And then you can just take any one of these, click on customize, and then add or remove columns using your available column selections. Okay. All right, so that brings us to the end of my XML analysis. So now that we have a fully linked program, we can now look at things like your resources, your secondary codes, and so forth. But what I'm going to do before we continue with that, I'm going to switch over to my Digital Twin Office Park program, and we will be working in this specific program up until our very last topic of the day, which is link and forecast analysis. Let's just have a look where we are right now. Agenda. Let's just have a look where we are right now. Planning resources. My planning resources. Okay, so for your planning resources, you need to define resources first. After you have defined these resources, you can then allocate it to your various activities. So for the definition of these, you need to click on the resource definitions icon, and it's the one on the left-hand side of the printer. and you will see that I have already defined a bunch of resources. So what you would need for a successful definition is a unique code. You need to identify the type, and if I just click on the type and the drop-down arrow, these are your options. You get a daily type, a total type, as well as a pool type. Then you need to give it a description. What is your unit of measure? And you can go as far as adding the cost per unit. What is the limit if you have a limit on that specific resource? And what's nice is that you can also give it a specific color. So the color only comes in handy when you want to print a report. Okay, so then you can obviously print it by a specific color. So this is how you would then create your resources. If you would like to create a team, or like we call it in estimating, a complex resource, you would need to define your simple resources first. So these are all my simple resources. And then you will create a team. Like in this case, we have the finishers team. And the reason why it's pink now, it's because under my resource gang sheet for finishers, I have then selected all my simple resources to make up this team. And that is why it turned from just the standard yellow color to a pink color. So what you would do is you would select a resource from the left-hand side using the green arrow, and then you will also just specify how many of each is required within this team. Okay, so that is it for the definitions of the resources. All right, so next on the agenda, let's just have a look where we are right now, is my planning resources. Okay, so for your planning resources, you need to define resources first. After you have defined these resources, you can then allocate it to your various activities. So for the definition of these, you need to click on the resource definitions icon, and it's the one on the left-hand side of the printer. And you will see that I have already defined a bunch of resources. So what you would need for a successful definition is a unique code. You need to identify the type, and if I just click on the type and the drop-down arrow, these are your options. You get a daily type, a total type, as well as a pool type. Then you need to give it a description. What is your unit of measure? And you can go as far as adding the cost per unit. What is the limit if you have a limit on that specific resource? And what's nice is that you can also give it a specific color. So the color only comes in handy when you want to print a report. Okay, so then you can obviously print it by a specific color. So this is how you would then create your resources. If you would like to create a team, or like we call it in estimating, a complex resource, you would need to define your simple resources first. So these are all my simple resources. And then you will create a team. Like in this case, we have the finishers team. And the reason why it's pink now, it's because under my resource gang sheet for finishers, I have then selected all my simple resources to make up this team. And that is why it turned from just the standard yellow color to a pink color. So what you would do is you would select a resource from the left-hand side using the green arrow, and then you will also just specify how many of each is required within this team. Okay, so that is it for the definitions of the resources. But before we continue to the allocations, I would just like us to zoom in a bit on the various types. So for my daily type, these are usually allocated to your plant or labor resources. In this case, the example is if you have a skilled labor, for instance, and you need a quantity of 10, my type is daily. If my activity is running for a 4-day duration, that means it will be a total of 10 allocated for each and every day. That means at the end of this 4-day duration, I would have made use of 40 man hours or 40 man days or whatever the case is. All right, then we have the total type. So your total type is usually allocated to your material types, so brickwork, concrete, whatever the case is. So if I have a total of 1,000 and my duration is still running for 4 days, you will take your quantity divided by your duration to allocate what your production or what the quantity is that you would like to achieve on a specific date. In this case, it's 250. My total will then still amount to 1,000. Whether there's a delay on this activity or I try and finish earlier, then your quantities per day will just change accordingly as long as the total amounts to 1,000. Then we have formwork. So formwork, this is more like your temporary material, right? So we have formwork, and then for temporary material, we will then allocate the pool type. So how this works is that you take something from the pool, you use it on site, and upon completion of the works, you return it back to the pool. So these are for things such as your formwork, your scaffolding, a crane, or whatever the case is. So if you just look at my comments, I said that the quantity is allocated to an activity and it will remain in use until it is returned to the pool. So how you can get rid of this or to indicate that it's been removed off site is that you need to introduce a negative quantity. All right, so if we just look at this in a lot more detail, this is the example we have formwork, it's running for a duration of 4 days. I will then allocate 250 per day until I get to my 4th day to make the 1,000. Then it will remain in the system for the duration of this positive allocation that you've done. So a good example is you set up your rebar, you put up your formwork, you cast your concrete, and then after curing, you then strip your concrete. So then you can introduce another activity, call it stripping of formwork. You will allocate a negative quantity next to that specific activity, and depending on the duration, you will remove it accordingly. So that means if you do draw up your histogram, it should be in a step form like this. Okay, so you start off with 250 or 0, 250 to 1,000, and then at the end of it, you should be left with nothing, meaning that in theory, it should be returned to the pool. And this is also just a nice way to double check your temporary material, because I know of a lot of sites who've run off or who's run at a loss when it comes to things like your formwork and scaffolding and so forth. Okay. So let's get back to Candy. So now that we have defined our resources, the next step for us is to just allocate it to the activities. Yes, I can use the activity bar chart list, which is document 1.1, and just customize it, or I can just see which document is available for use under the document manager for planning. And here you'll see under number 4, we have 4.2, which is a bar chart with resource allocations. Okay, so here you'll see that I have already allocated my resources. So all you need to do here is you allocate the code by double-clicking alongside an activity, selecting it from our code selection. You can double-click on it. If you have more than one, you can hold your Shift key in, click on the first one, click on the last one. If you want the selection, you hold your Control key in and select whatever you need, and then just green tick it. Okay, so once you have selected your code, you just need to give it a quantity or a number. So in this case, I said I need 2 unskilled laborers for the clearing of site. And then we also have what we call a start and end percentage offset. Okay, so if we look at this example, we have strip and clear site. It's running for a duration of 10 days. I've allocated all these activities. I've allocated all these resources to this one activity. And I'm now saying to the system that these resources are not required on this specific activity for the full duration of 10 days. Okay, so that is how you would then introduce or start using your start and end percentage offsets. So for my unskilled labor, I'm telling the system that I need it from day 1 up until day 10. But for my skilled labor, I only need him from 30% of my activity up until the 80th percent of my activity. All right, if you want to adjust it, you can use sit before the bar or after the yellow bar, and you can just increase or decrease it, or you can simply type in the start and end percentage offsets. Okay, this is just so that the distribution of your resources are more leveled, if you want to call it at that. All right, so that is how you would use your start and end percentage offsets. Okay, so once you're done with all your allocations, and you'll also see that what I've done here is for my concrete works, I have an activity called erect formwork to columns with a positive quantity of 150. And after my curing, I have removal of formwork with the negative quantity of what I have allocated to the erect formwork. Okay, so that is how you would use the whole pool type. So you allocate it positively and then allocate it again negative to remove it and take it back to the pool. Okay, so now that you've done your allocations, you can close this document, open up your standard bar chart, and then you can draw up an on-screen histogram. So for your on-screen histogram, you simply go to the histogram menu option, and then you can choose between your planning resources or estimating resources. The difference between the two is just that a planning resources that you have defined within the planning application. So that means what we did earlier, we went to the guy next to the printer, we defined resources and we've allocated it to our activities. And then for estimating resources, you would use this option if you have your bill and your program linked. All right, so then you can produce histograms based on your estimating resources. So we won't be doing the estimating resource histograms. Instead, we will look at our planning resource histograms. So these are my selection. So these are all the resources that I have used. So now you can go and tell the system, I want to look at my unskilled labor or my skilled labor or multiple resources at once. You can do that. Like I've explained earlier, hold your control key in and just select what you need. All right, so if I just want to look at unskilled labor, I sit on unskilled labor, I green tick it, and there you can see my nice little histogram. You can also scroll all the way down to like a blank section of the bar chart just so that you can follow that graph nicely. If you want to just look at your activities where these unskilled labor has been used, you simply go to histogram again, and then you can select histogram filter. So that means it will chuck away all the activities where I have not used these resources and only give me the activities where I have used the unskilled labor resource. And here you can see on my filter toolbar, I have used it on a total of 81 activities. Okay, you can use your scroll bar on the bar chart to just go left and right to identify where your peaks are at, and so on. Okay, and the nice thing about this is that depending on where you sit with your mouse pointer, as you follow the histogram bars, the information on the bottom left-hand side, let me just quickly move there, bottom left-hand side where it says value, PC day for 16th of Feb, that will indicate the number of resources for that specific day. Okay, so where I'm currently sitting on the 3rd of May 2021, PC day 52, I have a total of 11 unskilled labor. And if you just scroll up, you'll see the activity that contributes to it. So in this case, it is excavate bases. And if I go all the way up again, you'll see that there are more activities that contributes to this total of 11 laborers or unskilled laborers. Okay. And then if you want to get rid of the filter, you simply click on abandon. And now if you want to look at a cumulative curve, you go back to histogram, select the option histogram options, and you select plot cumulative values instead of your daily values. Green ticket, and here you'll see that these are my cumulative curve. And if I go to the very end where it plateaus, I'll see that I have a total of 6,923 man days by the end of this project. Okay, so that is it for my histograms, but you're welcome to go through all of these options. So you can redo your histogram, and then if we, let me just go back, change my options to plot daily values. We won't do it, but I just want to bring your attention to it. You have the move bar mode. So if you click on move bar mode, it will just allow you to move your bars. And this will obviously allow you to make use of resource leveling if you would like to do it. But we put the option in your hands because, yeah, we don't really advise people to make use of resource leveling, but the option is there for you. So the option is there. You simply then go to the front of the bar, so it ignores the links. And if you go to the front of the bar, like I have it here, you will see the double-sided green arrow, and this will allow you to just move your bars accordingly. All right. Okay, guys, so that brings me to the end of the on-screen histogram. So to close this down, I simply click on this little X box, and I get rid of my histograms. Right, so let's look at a few reports before we continue on to the next topic. And on my report manager, you'll see that I've already created a few reports. But you can obviously create your own report. You can customize it however way you like. And you can do that by simply going to new reports, and these are all your options. Okay, and then each and every one of these reports can be customized according to your needs. So you'll see here I have a summary bar chart as well as the one for earthworks. We will come back to this one. Then we have our total labor histogram and our concrete histogram. So let's start off with the summary bar chart. I've already customized it, and you'll see that on the very top here, it's telling me that I've summarized this program to a level 3. So this is just a very high level program for you to identify when certain activities are happening, just so that it also allows you to plan your life accordingly, you know, in terms of your foreman and your laborers or resources that you will require on site. And this is just what it looks like. Very high level with our end date indicated on the right-hand side of the screen. Then we have our total labor histogram. And if you look on the right-hand side of this little block, you'll see that I've selected the unskilled labor, semi-skilled, and my skilled labor. On the histogram, I have selected my early and late starts, and I've selected cumulative curves as well as my daily values. So if I preview this for you, it's a bit small, so let me just zoom in on the left-hand side. You'll see that it will tell you what is your maximum at early start, what is the maximum at late starts, and then at the end of the project, what is your total value. So you can see that for skilled, unskilled, semi-skilled, and so on. Okay, so you can obviously select any resource that you would like to monitor and print out this report. If I go just scroll in or zoom in a bit, you'll see that these are my daily values, and I have my S-curve running with the early start as well as with the late start. Then we have the concrete histogram and S-curve. So this is ideal for high-risk resources, you know, where, let's say, for instance, concrete is a high-risk resource on my project, then I will run a specific histogram or S-curve for that resource only. So in this case, we've selected concrete. I've again included my daily bars as well as my cumulative values. And if I print that out, you'll see what that looks like. And again, if I just zoom in on the left-hand side of the screen, you'll see what is the maximum at early start, what is the late quantity at late start, as well as my total value. So in this case, we have a total of 2,500 cubes of concrete. All right. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our resources. And next on the agenda, we have activity coding. And like I have mentioned earlier, so these are just your secondary codes. So any of your secondary codes can be defined on your definitions and settings menu icon. So if I click on it, let me just scroll all the way down, you'll have your program settings, you'll have your program code definitions, as well as your bar chart settings. So under number 2, you can define your zone codes, trade codes, area codes. You can see the list is endless, all right? And this just allows you to look at certain activities in isolation. So the example we will be looking at is my site responsibility, and you'll see what I've done here is I have defined it for each and every foreman. So I have my brickwork foreman, concrete foreman, earthworks foreman, finishers and formwork foreman. So once you have defined it, again, you need a unique code, you give it a description, and like I've also mentioned earlier, the color just allows you to differentiate between these various codes when it comes to printing of reports. Okay. So now that we have defined our site responsibility codes, the next step, of course, is to allocate these codes to our activities. For that, I will go back to my document manager, and instead of using the 4.2 bar chart with resource allocations, I will now go to document 3.3, all codes, and you'll see that if I select this document, we have all our secondary code option columns listed on this document. Okay. What you'll also notice is that I've already allocated some of the codes, and you have to just make sure that if you want to make use of site responsibility code, make sure you are in that column. If you want to allocate subcontractor codes, just ensure that you are in the subcontract column. Double click in the subcontractor column, and then you can just select whichever subcontractor you would like to allocate to these activities. Okay. So to allocate, like I've also mentioned previously, it works the same throughout. You just double click, you do your selection, you green tick it, and that is it. You can also do a selection. So let's say we want to allocate a specific code to these activities that we have selected. We select it, we right click in the blue area, we go to code allocation. Depending on which code you would like to allocate, you go there, like site responsibilities, allocate, and then you will select the relevant code. You can also make use of the filtering options. So if I just look for an example here quickly, let's say I want to look for finishes. I can then select the word finishes, right click in it, select the option to filter on a fragment. I want to reduce this filter by keeping the word finishes in there, green tick it, and you'll see that it has found true. Okay, so then it picked up floor finishes as well as in block A and block B. I can then continue this filter to say that because I want to allocate my finishes foreman to all these activities, I can also add the paint work, for instance. So then I would make use of this little plus sign on my filter toolbar, and I will apply the filter to the current column, which is my activity description column. I'm happy with that. And now I want to increase this filter by adding painting. And now you'll see that it has found a total of 8. So now that I'm happy with my finisher selection, I will click on select on the filter toolbar, and then in the blue area, go to code allocation, site responsibility, allocate, and now I can select the finishers foreman. And there you will see it allocated my finishers foreman to these various activities. When you're done, you simply click on abandon. And that is it. Okay, so you define it, you allocate it, and then after the allocations, you can then generate your various reports. So I will close this, go to my report manager, and you'll see that I took my contractual program summary bar chart and I've just duplicated and renamed it to contractual program earthworks only. Okay, so here I will show you guys what I did. If I click on customize report, if I go to selection, yes, it's my entire program, but I put a tick in my filter box, and program code definitions, I put a tick in my site responsibility box, and I have selected my earthworks foreman. Okay. You can just add your legends on there as well by going to the legend tab, and in this case we have positioned it on the bottom right hand side of the screen. If you go to bars and links, this is where the color comes into play. So when we did our definitions both on the resource definitions menu icon as well as the definitions and settings menu icon, we selected various colors. And then if you come to bars and links, you can color bars by. And these are my options. Okay, so I'm going to select color bars by my site responsibility. And then when I click on OK and preview, now my bars are like an orangey color because I have selected an orangey color. And if you look at my legends over here, orange is for my brickwork foreman, green for my concrete foreman, a deeper orange, I suppose, for the earthworks and finishes and so on. Okay, so that is where the color comes in. So you don't have to put color, but if you do make use of the color option, you just go to bars and links to make sure that you color your bars by these various colors. Okay. And that is it for our secondary codes, which are my activity codes. And next on the agenda, we have our long lead schedule as well as the information schedule. So what are these? So your long lead information schedules are used to manage events or operations that happen offsite prior to the actual construction activity commencing on site. So these events can be scheduled and monitored on either the long lead or the information schedule, which are tabular documents linked to the activity list of the program. Okay, so why do we have a long lead schedule? Why do we have an information schedule? So the difference between the two is the following. So the long lead, so this is used when a series of offsite events with the dependent link between each other is linked to an activity. So that means that if there is a delay on any one of these events, it will affect your activity. So that is a long lead schedule. Whereas with my information schedule is that this is used when a group of offsite activities has to happen in parallel before an activity can commence. So that means a delay in any of these activities will not affect the next event. It will have a direct impact on your actual activity, however. All right, so long lead schedule, if you have 10 events, each and every event is dependent on each other. That means that delay in one will affect the next one and ultimately the activity. With your information schedule, you have 10 items running in parallel to each other. A delay in one won't affect the next event. It will, however, affect the activity. Okay, and if we just put this in a graphical example, my actual activity is install the lift. Then I have all these items that needs to still happen. You have the design stage, the tender stage, the manufacturing stage with the amount of days running. That means that in series or in total, I have 50 days to prepare in order to have a successful installation of the list. And that again means that if there's a delay in design stage, it will affect my tender stage, my manufacturing stage, and ultimately the installation of the lift. Okay. Then we have the information schedule. If you have cast floor slab, these are all my events that needs to happen in parallel, the general arrangements, the reinforcing schedule, casting items. If there's a delay in any one of these items, it won't affect the succeeding item, but it will have a direct impact on my casting of the floor slab. So in total, these items are running in parallel and I need a total of 25 days to ensure that my casting of the floor slab happens on time, on the scheduled time. Okay, so let's go back to Candy. Schedules, you will click on the L icon. So you see if I go to, just hover my mouse over that L icon, I can then access my long lead schedule. And you'll see what I did here is I have already created a few items. So I brought in activity A000, A100, A110, and A160 by typing it in. And then my actual activity here is foundation brickwork. So my activity start date is on the 5th of May 2021. But before I can start with this activity, I have the information for brickwork. I need to build a sample. I need to get it approved, order, and then have the supplier supply it for me. All right, and then how these start and finish dates are calculated. So it gets calculated based on the duration that you put on here. So we just have to keep in mind that these durations does not include non-working days, it does not include holidays or weekends. So that means from the 5th of May, less my 15, let's say about 35 days, I need to start with the information for the brickwork in order to make sure that I have my supplied or my material on site by the 4th of May, which is my drop dead date, in order for me to start with the actual activity on the 5th of May. All right, if there's a delay in any one of these activities or items rather, let's differentiate between the actual activity. So we'll call these items. So if there's a delay in any of these items, it will impact the succeeding items, and ultimately it will definitely have an effect on my start date of the 5th of May, right? So you have a start date, you have a finish date, and then what was your actual finish date? You can also be proactive, you know, let's say the supplier has been closed down or they don't have stock of this and they can only supply you with stock on the 6th of June, then you can say that these guys can only supply me on the 6th of June. Then you can transfer this information back to your program to see what the effect will be. All right, so that is when it comes to my long lead schedule, it allows you to be proactive. Then we have the information schedule by clicking on the I, and you'll see that I have not started anything on here. So what I did on the long lead schedule is I brought in my items by typing it in, or my activities by typing in the activity number. But what you can also do is you can bring in the entire activity list onto this document. So to do that, you simply click on Tools, Import from Program, import all the activities. Yes, I would like to import everything. And this is what it would look like. So this is my entire program, which I brought on here. And now I can allocate items to specific activities. Also, just make sure that if there's no number in the T column, these are your actual activities, all right? So don't make the mistake to try and type alongside earthworks, for instance, because earthworks is a heading. Also, you can't go and type in a duration in there and expect it to calculate a date for you, because you need to add in a blank line first and then add your items. So let's take removal of topsoil. As an example, I'm going to need general arrangements. And what this means is that after I have removed the topsoil, where am I going to dump it? Okay, so the engineer needs to tell me this, and I'm going to give him 10 days. He's responsible for it. And the minute I hit enter, I need to know what's going to happen by the 25th of February, right? So remember, this is taking into account non-working days and so forth. Then we can also go ahead again. Let's say we take our rebar fixing and placing. All you do is you insert, control insert blank lines below the item that you would need information for. So if we take this specific one, you also need general arrangements. For instance, you're going to need the bending schedule. Let me just take this out. You're going to maybe need casting items. And then you can give it a duration. So you give it a duration, 5 days and 10 days or 19 days, whatever the case is. And you'll see that these dates are independent from each other. It's just got the only date it's got in common is my fixing of rebar date, which is the 9th of April. Again, you can be proactive by saying that, you know, the engineer is on holiday, so we can only finish up this meeting at the end of March, for instance, and then transfer this information back to your program to see what the effect will be. All right, so we can actually do that example. So let's make sure, so on calculate, you need to always make sure that you calculate it using the base program. Let's take the first one, which is my general arrangement. I know the engineer is on holiday and he will be back on the 3rd of, let's just type here 03/03/21, hit enter. You'll see that the effect is 3 days. So it might not have an effect on the program, but let's see. So if I want to see how this affects my activities, I can click on the tools menu icon and then go to export to program. Do you want to clear any existing information or restraints? Yes, I do. And now my export is complete. So to view these delays, there's a special document for it. So I will go to document 5.4, which is my bar chart with restraints. And there is the information delay I've introduced on this activity. And you can see that it is affecting my project. And I don't even have to look at my end date because I know it's definitely overrunning that end date of 22nd of May or whatever the case is, because it is purple. And then if we look closer to the bar, you'll see there's like a arrow before the bar. And this just indicates that you have enforced a delay on this activity. Okay. And if I just open up my standard bar chart, this is what it would look like. And these are all the activities that are affected by that one delay. All right. So to clear this out, you can either leave it like this or submit it to the client and say, hey, if I don't get an answer by a specific date, this is the effect it's going to have on the program. And then they will probably refer you to someone else to assist. So you can then come back here, select all, right click, go to restraints, and then you can remove the specific restraint. This was an information restraint. Click on it, hit your calculate button again, and your bars will move in its original position. So I will just go back to my information schedule and then remove this proactive date I had put in there, hit the calculate button, and then that brings us to the end of using your information schedule or your long lead schedule. So if we go to the report manager now, you'll see that we have two reports here, detailed long lead bar chart, standard bar chart with long lead items. So the only difference between the two here is that if we take the first one, we only added the items or the activities that are affected by these items. So there we have foundation brickwork and we have the items listed nicely there. So you can even clearly distinguish between which is an item and which is an actual activity by looking at the bars. All right, and then the next report we have here is you can also include your entire program. So in this case, we have all our activities, whether it's got an item listed underneath it or not. And you can still see that, yes, I have my program, my activities running nicely, but I also have my items listed above it. Okay, so for the information schedule, I'm just going to select the standard bar chart with items as bars. This one includes all my activities. So if I preview it, you'll see that this is what it would look like. So there's item 1, which I have added under my removal of my topsoil, and you'll see the rest under the rebar fixing and placing. Okay. And that brings us to the end of the information and long lead schedule. So now we're going to look at Link and Forecast. So Link and Forecast is an application that allows you to forecast your budget. You can forecast your quantities, your activity quantities or amounts, or whatever the case is. So this is a slide we usually use during a demo or a training. And we just explain to the guys that if you have an estimate that's been priced in Candy, preferably you're using resources, and you have a program that's been fully linked, you can link the two by either manually linking it. So if I have an existing program, I have an existing bill of quantities, I can manually link the two, or I can create my activities from my estimate to generate a dynamic link, or alternatively, I can create my program first, price it, and then transfer that information to the bill. But whichever way you decide to do it, you will establish a dynamic link, which will allow you to generate a tender budget forecast. All right, so you have money on the one side, time on the other side. That way it allows you to forecast. Then we also have the cash flow forecast. Since you have your tender budget forecast, the cash flow forecast just allows you to add additional settings, such as the interest rates, your retentions, and a bunch of those things. And then that will just tell you how much money are you going to need to start with this program or this project until you eventually break even. Okay, so we're not going to touch on cash flow. We're just looking at the tender budget forecast, which is under Link and Forecast. So here I'm just saying that when starting the integration process, items from the Candy bill of quantities can be allocated to activities in the Candy planning program. A dynamic link is established when the BOQ is linked to the program. And all that means is that any changes made to your program, so if there's an increase of duration, if you change the activity description, it will affect your forecast. The same applies for your estimate. If you go and change your rates, for instance, we will see that effect immediately. I just have to point out though that on the estimate, if you go and adjust your final quantities, so let's say for Clearside, I had a total quantity of 1,000. I've adjusted my final quantity to 1,100. That means I will have an under allocation of 100. So you guys will just have to make sure that you go and redistribute that 100 so that the spread can be seen on screen. This brings us to the last topic. So I'm going to switch over to Link and Forecast. All right, and we have various documents to do these functions. So first up is my link document. So I've already linked my bill items to my program. So then I will simply go to the link document, and now I will filter to make sure that all my items, my bill items, was linked to my program activities. And then if it's not the case, then we can continue by looking at how do we go about linking your bill with your program. But this is basically the document you will use, either document 3.1, which is the BOQ with activity allocations. And if I quickly go to the document manager, you'll see that we also have 3.2, which is activities with the BOQ allocations. All right, so to check for any over or under allocations, I simply need to right click, filter for over or under allocations, and you'll see that my one has found 48. Okay, if I just close everything to a highest level quickly. Oh, I canceled my filter. So let's just do that again. Filter for over and under. Hide rejects, that's fine. And if I open that up, you'll see that all of these items that was found are under my indirects. Okay, So these indirect items have been marked as internal items. So what I can do is I can link this to my P&G activity. And this will just allow the QS better management when he wants to do his valuation updates come post-tender stage. All right, so that is what we can do. So to link it, since I have multiple bill items that I would like to link to one activity, which is one to many or many to one in this case, I will use document 3.2. So 3.2 is my activity with BOQ allocations, and then I will just open up my bill. If I had multiple activities that I wanted to link to one bill item, then I would have used this document and just opened up my standard bar charts. So I will close this document now and open up document 3.2, size it to the top half of the screen. There's my P&G item, and you'll see that I've already allocated clause 15 prep for, it's a P&G item, I've already allocated it to this, but it only carries a selling rate. Okay, so it doesn't have a net rate because I've cleared that worksheet. So now I can allocate my internal items as well to see the spread accordingly. So then I will open up my bill document and I will select all my internal items from the start up until the very end of it. Hold my shift key in, and now all I need to do is hold my left click in, drag it. Can you see it says now valid drop position, and drop it onto that document. And that's how easy it is. You can either type it in, you can drag and drop it. It is entirely up to you. Then I will go back to my link document. I will run a filter again, and you'll see that no items were found to match this filter. Also, to just make sure that the spread is done in proportion to my program duration, I will simply right click in my allocated quantity total column and select proportional spread override allocations. Okay. So now that we have done this, I can view this by clicking on the F icon, which is my forecast document. This one is based on my net values. And if I go all the way up, there you will see if I hit the calculate button, these are all my forecasts. Unfortunately, I can't fit all the columns in, so I'll use this right-sided arrow and just scroll through my months. Okay. So it's better to actually just look at reports. So I will close this document now, go to the report manager, and here you'll see I've created a few reports. I have my BOQ budget forecast. This one is based on net. Then I've created one for indirects only, and then I have created one for my client's budget. We'll look at the resources one just now. So for my budget forecast, this one includes my direct items as well as my indirect items. I would like to summarize this, so I'm going to customize it. And under paging and totaling, I will select summary only, click on OK and preview it. Okay, this is what my summary looks like. So we have P&G, Earthworks, there's my indirect section, and you can see the spread per month for your various trades that you have available. Like I have mentioned, this is based on your net values. So then I took this very same document, I've duplicated it, but instead of now a summarized version, I've selected everything, which I should have actually selected summary only. But yeah, so this the QS can then use to claim against. I'm just going to scroll until I can find stuff. And here we have it, okay, for your indirects. Okay, let's just customize it. So under selection, go to internal items only, click on OK, and then preview. And these are all my internal items. And then you can also change this. So instead of getting the amounts or spreading the amounts, what you can do is you can spread the quantity. And then the QS can obviously use those quantities under the evaluations. And then we have the client budget forecast. So this is just based on my selling values. You'll see that my final selling amount is 14.8 million. And you can see the spread from the start of the project to the end of the project. You can also look at your estimate resource forecasts. So this is just based on labor, my resource types, labor, plant, material. What is my spread per month? And what is the allocated allowable for labor or for plant or for material? I've selected my net S curve as well. My net amounts to 13 million. This is just based on my early start. You can also select your late starts and you can see the values on the left-hand side accordingly. Then we have our selling S curve. So if I preview this, 14.8 million, and you can have a look at the values on the left-hand side of the screen as well. Okay. And that brings us to the end of session 2. Thank you all so much. I trust that you have learned something from the session. Goodbye for now.
Thank you, Marjorie. To close off day 2 session, I would like to end off with a short clip which showcases our cost management and enterprise accounting solution, Bill Smart. When integrated with Candy, the 2 software products gives you a complete solution that manages the entire construction lifecycle from tender to final account. Please do not forget to complete the event survey that will land in your email inboxes shortly. And as always, please do not hesitate to reach out to us with your questions and queries. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. Thank you.
Only the best is built on a rock-solid foundation, which is why RIB CCS developed unique, powerful construction and engineering software like BuildSmart, our game-changing enterprise accounting, procurement, and cost management solution for the built environment that enables businesses to excel in the digital age of construction. Developed by contractors for contractors, BuildSmart leverages years of industry experience, providing organizations with the tools to gain a competitive advantage. Visit ribccs.com and speak to us today. RIB CCS, the foundation of future success.
Build best practice with Candy in 2021. Thank you for joining us. If you haven't registered for our post-tender session tomorrow, visit the page below.